Hello and welcome to this discussion on a poem by Rabindranath Tagore, Where the Mind is Without Fear. Rabindranath Tagore was a great poet of India, born on 7th May 1861 and died on 7th August 1941. He was a poet, a dramatist, a short story writer, a novelist, an actor, a musician, a composer, a director, an essayist, a philosopher, a thinker, an educator, a patriot, and a freedom fighter, rolled into one. His personality was so versatile that it is quite difficult to fit him into any particular category, but Rabindranath himself declared in 1931 on his 70th birthday that he was basically a poet. He said, I am a poet, Ami Kavi. He was such a brilliant poet that with the publication of his Gitanjali in English in 1912, he became famous all over the world. And in 1913, he received the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he was the first person to receive this prize in all of Asia. His Gitanjali, meaning song offering, is a collection of 103 songs in English, which was translated by the poet himself from Bengali into English. The Bengali edition was published in 1910 and it included 157 poems. In Gitanjali, the poet is basically expressing his mystical feelings with the Almighty, with the God, with the Supreme Consciousness. He is a devout philosopher, a religious, mystic poet that comes across through his Gitanjali. He was a well-established poet before the publication of Gitanjali in Bengal, but his fame got a worldwide spectrum with the publication of Gitanjali in 1912. The foreword to Gitanjali was written by none less than W. Yeats himself, who was another mystic poet and a great poet that Europe has produced. He was an Irish poet, W. Yeats, and he was also a Nobel laureate. In his preface to the original edition of Gitanjali, published in 1912, he eulogizes Rabindranath Tagore to a great extent. And this poem, Where the Mind is Without Fear, is one of the most anthologized poems by Rabindranath Tagore. Let us come to the poem first. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. This poem, as we see, is not written in the form of a traditional poem, that is a verse poem. It is a prose poem. It is in free verse. You may remember the poem written by Walt Whitman that we discussed in the last video class. There, Walt Whitman was also employing this technique of free verse and freedom from rhymes and regular meter and freedom from elevated diction. The same is applicable to this poem by Rabindranath also. Here the ideas get the prominent position, not the form. The substance is most important, not the form of the poem. Here, the poem in total consists of 11 lines, and the first 9 lines that begin with where the mind is without fear, or where knowledge is free, or where the world had not been broken up into fragments. Like in all these 9 lines are a part of lines which are, we find that the poet is enumerating and listing the attributes of a utopian or an ideal condition of a country in which he wants his country to arrive, in which he wants his country to awaken. We find that the poet has a very idealistic imagination of his country to be free from fear, free from fragmentations, free from narrowness, free from imperfection, free from dreariness, and free from dead habits. And he wants his country where knowledge is not restricted to a limited people, where it is free for all, where people have their dignity safe and secure, where they can live with their head held high. We know that the poem was written in 1910 in Bengali and published later on in 1912 in English. The time was that of the British rule in India, and there was a freedom struggle going on. So the poet is making a roadmap for the type of freedom that his country should strive for. And the poem employs the technique of alliteration to a great extent, and basically it is free from any regular verse pattern. It is a joy of reading this poem, and whenever someone has to find some solace, some contribution, some consolation regarding some targets to be achieved in life, this poem should show the path. What type of an ideal world can a person strive for is beautifully presented by this poet in these 11 lines. Thank you.